everyone. Welcome to our podcast, Untold Stories. I'm going to be sharing with you my 50 years of rod building and some of the crazy stories that have come along with it.
Today, we have a highly requested topic about Randy. We deep dive into his 50 years out on the water and building custom fishing rods, and we talk about his first ever fishing rod he built with his grandmother's thread, and how that grew into the career he has today. Stay tuned. Just to get into it, how did you start out? How did you get into fishing as a young boy, and how did it all start?
Well, it's an interesting story. I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, Wilton Manors, actually, and I lived with my grandparents, my mom, grandmother, grandfather, and my grandfather was very instrumental to me growing up. He was my guy. We did everything together. He kind of pushed me into playing baseball. Everything I did, he was behind me. So was my mom. And, as a young boy, he would take me fishing on the weekends. He was a carpenter by trade. So during the week, he was busy. On the weekends, we'd go to Loxahatchee. And I'll never forget, as a little kid driving down the road, it seemed like the road to get out there was forever. Just took so much time. And we would get out there and we had our little spots on the bank. And I had my cane pole, and I knew nothing about rods and fishing or any of that stuff. I just knew it was kind of neat to get something on the other end of the line. So I became the mudfish master. I caught mudfish better than anybody.
Nice.
And I thought, man, it would be cool someday to catch a bass. But we were fishing from the bank, and it wasn't...
So no boat?
No boat. It was a lot of just bank fishing. And you hoped you didn't step on an alligator or a snake or something.
And plenty of those out there, I bet.
No shortage of them in Loxahatchee. So I kind of grew up doing that on the weekends with him. And, as things started to evolve, talking to my friends, talking to kids in the neighborhood, this one was on his bicycle that was down the street fishing in Charlie March's pond. He had a stock pond in the neighborhood. And his mother really hated us jumping the fence going in there bass fishing. But we started catching these big bass on lizards. So we'd catch a couple of lizards and we'd jump the fence and we'd go in there long enough to catch a bass and get kicked out. So it was things like that we did on our bicycle. We started sharing stuff with local bridges, and it just started to evolve as I was getting older. And I noticed that some of the guys in the neighborhood had custom rods that were being built maybe by Bill Boyd's or TNR Tackle or Beach Bait and Tackle. And I thought, man, those are really cool looking. My rod was just something from Kmart or Gold Triangle.
Yep.
And I thought, man, that's kind of interesting. I think I could make that thing look a lot better than what it looks like. So my friends, of course, said that wouldn't happen. I don't know what I'm doing. And, there's people that do that. So it kind of intrigued me a little bit. So I thought I would one-up them. And I guess I was about 10 years old. I asked my mom to take me down to the tackle shop, Bill Boyd's Bait and Tackle in Fort Lauderdale. And we go in there and I see all the rods and I pick one out, and my mom looks at me and goes, I don't think so. And it was $200 back then, 1972. And I was like, I don't understand. What? It's only money. How come I can't get this rod? And, it was about 10 times the price of what I was buying at Gold Triangle. So there was a guy there that worked, Charlie March, the guy that had the pond in the neighborhood. And he kind of said to me and my mom there, he goes, why don't you get him the parts? I'm sure he can figure out how to build it and let him make his own rods. Be kind of fun. And of course, I was like, yeah. So she bought me the parts. I went home. I tried to put this stuff together. And I'd been wrapping a little bit before this because my grandmother was a seamstress. So I had millions of colors of threads. It seemed like this wall, just had all these different colors of sewing thread. So at night, I would take a coffee table, a tray table, and I'd flip it upside down to where the two V's on each end, I could set the rod in there and I could turn it and I could wrap. Because I figured out how to start and stop pretty quick, but I didn't know the rest of it, how to hold things together and how to keep them from falling off. Yeah. So I kind of self-taught myself watching TV and doing that. And then when I would try to finish, put a finish over the thread, it would turn black because her sewing thread wasn't treated. It was just sewing thread. So it looked good till it got wet.
Yeah.
So I thought, man, what is going on? So I go back to Bill Boyd's and I tell Charlie about it. And Charlie goes, oh, there's thread that we use for rods. It's a special thread that keeps the color. And then, he showed me now another rainbow of colors of all these different things that won't change. So I thought, oh, man, this is the way to go. So I got some thread, went back home and started wrapping on it and came up with kind of my own little look. It was green and yellow and black. And I started wrapping, and it was staying true to what I did, the colors. And I was very fascinated with the look of it. I just thought the look was so cool to do a diamond wrap or do a chevron wrap, and it just intrigued me, and never thought about doing it for money. It was just now I could give them to my friends, and they would have one of my rods, and they would use it, and they would talk about it, and they would be happy, and really that's how it all started with me as a young kid, playing baseball or riding my bicycle to the local canals and the dams. And then as I got older, my mom would take me to the fishing piers. Then the day came where I got my license to drive. It all changed then. So I actually had a job at Bill Boyd's Bait and Tackle early on, not to wrap rods, but just to help in the tackle shop. And the lady there, Joanne, was wrapping rods, and I would watch her wrap and epoxy and do things. And I thought, man, I could do that. So I would go home after I would work a few hours, and I would try it, and I would try to remember what she did. And I met one of my best friends to this day, Greg Thomas, was working in the tackle shop. And Greg was eat up with fishing like me, but we didn't have a boat. He had a car. So now we got a vehicle to go fishing anywhere we want to go, and he was ready at the drop of a hat. So after we would work at the tackle shop, we would then go out at night and go snook fishing or, run around, try to catch a tarpon or something.
So you guys worked together
Yeah.
at the tackle shop,
Yeah.
and then you would get off of work and go fishing. And you guys had your own rods, or you were using something?
I'm sure I had a few then,
Okay.
but it was really kind of evolving into more things at this time because I'm getting exposed to bridge fishing. I'm getting exposed to pier fishing. I started building pier rods. I started building, things to suit what I was doing and where I was going. So now my vision of being creative on 9-foot rods, 8-foot rods, casting rods, spinning rods, everything just opened up. And I thought, man, this is really exciting to me. So I got more into it. And a little while later, when I got my license and I could drive, I had an opportunity to work for Tommy Green at Custom Rod and Reel in Pompano. So that was kind of my first job, wrapping rods for somebody. And it was pretty interesting because now I've evolved into like a mate on a lot of boats. I was mating on charter boats. I was mating on private boats. I started fishing with people because I had some success with sword fishing at night, had success with sail fishing and things like that. So everybody was looking for somebody to take them fishing. And again, I don't think I was really charging anything as much as I was getting the experience. And then if I brought my rods along and they saw the rods, they were like, oh, hey, how can we get some of these? Well, I'm working at the tackle shop, and, and I'd send them over to the tackle shop, and Tommy would put the deal together. So still learning the business, learning how it all works to make money and so forth. And I got my education 100% from Tommy Green when I was growing up, that being my first wrapping job.
Yeah. So you said you were complimented on a lot of your rods, obviously taking them out on different charter boats. And were you ever offered any money? Did anybody ever try to buy one off of you because they fell in love with it?
I'm sure they did, but again, I'm now 17, 18, I'm playing baseball. I'm working on boats. The fishing was just fun. It wasn't, I never thought of it as a business like, man, I can make these things and make a living. I was going to make my living playing baseball. That was my thing. I played through high school and community league and now at the college level. And I thought, well, this is just fun. It's exciting. I made them for my teachers. I made them for all my friends. And, making them for Tommy, I was learning pretty quick that I shouldn't be giving it away because he was certainly charging and he had a clientele. Yep. And it was a big business. And I learned what it was all about from watching him, having him talk to customers and deal with people and put all this together. I didn't realize it at the time. I just thought he was a ball buster, you know, and just the way he would do things sometimes, I was like, man, that's not very nice.
Yeah.
I would have done a little different to myself. But again, I'm a sponge. I'm absorbing everything. And then about, I don't know, I worked for Tommy for a couple of years, and then baseball got a little more serious, and it kind of took over. And then I was working on some private boats doing Bahama stuff and things like that. And then I started meeting some people at this point that wanted me to build rods for them. So I was doing some stuff at my house. I had a little shop set up in my bedroom of an apartment that I was living in. So I kind of realized, hey, this isn't too bad. I can build fishing rods. I can go fishing, and it kind of started then. And then the baseball got more serious. So I was hoping to have that career and play baseball. So I guess about the late 70s, the baseball, I got hurt. I was a pitcher, and I threw my arm out and quickly realized that this probably isn't going to work. And I was on a kind of a level where being hurt was a bad thing for a young pitcher. So I kind of realized that probably wasn't going to work. Needed a plan B, and I was working on a boat at Bahia Mar with Captain Oz Keggy. He had a boat there called the It's Okay, and Ozzy and I really got along great, and we caught a lot of fish together. And he was going to move to the Keys, and I want to say it was in July 1981. And he said, I'm leaving next week to go to the Keys. If you want to come, you have a place to stay. You got a job. I'm sure you can find a place to build your rods. If you want the opportunity, come on. And I thought, man, $250 a month for rent. I don't know about that. I could get a shop for a couple of $100 a month. And I'm thinking, I don't have any money, and I'm going to move to the Keys. And
How
I thought,
am I going to make this work?
There was nothing left in Lauderdale at the time. I didn't want to go back to college. I was at a point where I was maybe a little bit depressed. And I just thought, okay, I think this is a cool thing. And we left, moved to the Keys, and started working on his charter boat out of Bud Mary's. So I quickly realized what was going on with the charter boats and the guides. I didn't really know much about the guiding business. I saw these guys with their own boats. They were independent. They were doing their own thing. They were catching, bonefish and tarpon and permit. And I thought, man, this is pretty cool. And I had been exposed to some bone fishing and red fishing through Ozzy in Biscayne Bay and Flamingo and stuff. And I had gotten a taste of it and thought it was pretty cool. So I opened a little shop on Industrial Drive in Islamorada. And when I say little, maybe a 10 by 10 or a 10 by 12 little space. And there wasn't much in it. I had, enough room for my wrapping and a bench to glue and some turners. And I just felt like there's people that need their rods fixed. Yeah. And there were a few guys around town that did it, but I felt like I could make my own way doing what I was doing.
You build your first rod at 10 years old.
Yep.
And then how old were you when you started the shop?
Well, when I had my first shop, I was now 20.
Okay, so there was like a 10-year span with the baseball and...
Yeah, and I worked for different people. I also worked for George Copeland, which is another great mentor, friend of mine. Him and Tommy worked together when I was at Custom Rod and Reel. And those two guys really guided me a lot in what I was doing. I fished with them. We would go snook fishing in Stewart after work. I got exposed to some bridge fishing and giant snook, and it was really cool. Well, George ended up buying T&R Tackle, so he had his own tackle shop. Tommy Green had his tackle shop. So I did work for George for a little bit of time during all that, and I want to say I was probably working for George around the time I left to go to the Keys, and kind of off and on. But some of the greatest rod builders were out of T&R Tackle. Danny Palmatier, Lee Cammon, Frank O'Black was a great builder. He could build and just do beautiful cork work and things like that. So I just soaked it up with all these guys that I was around, and they all had skills, and I learned how to do it the way they were doing it. I never watched a video, read a book, or anything like that. I would see somebody rapping, or I would look at it, and I would just, in my mind, I knew how to do it on my own.
Yeah. Yeah, you're kind of learning from memory. You're watching them do it. You can't take a video of them and
Right.
go watch it later. There were no videos back then.
No, there was no way.
There still are none today.
Yeah, there was no way to replay what I was seeing. I just
had to hope you remember when you get home, and
I would race home.
Yeah.
I would race to the table and try to remember, how it was put together or how the cross stitching went on a solid diamond.
Yeah.
And then I spent a lot of time too just sitting there doing my own thing. When I was growing up in my bedroom, I had a turner to epoxy, and then I had my wrapping thing, and I was in my bedroom working on fishing rods a lot growing up. And to my mother's credit, I'm sure I'm here today because of doing that as a kid, not getting in trouble, not going out with the other guys. My time was kind of limited because baseball kept me busy and the wrapping kept me busy. So I didn't always go when my buddies would say, hey, we're going down to the canal and go fishing. A lot of times I didn't go because I was into something I didn't want to stop doing.
You were busy.
Yeah. But, going to the canals, like the first rod I made had a Shakespeare 2052 reel on it. And back then in the 70s, that was the cat's pajamas for a little reel in the canals. And we would fish little small rapalas, and we would go to the local bridges and catch snook. So snook fishing was kind of my first real saltwater fish I got into catching in Fort Lauderdale because they were pretty plentiful everywhere you would go. Canals, dams, they were on the beaches. So that was kind of my go-to growing up fish. And now I'm, here I am in the Keys. I'm faced with, okay, what's life going to be? And as I started getting guys knowing about me, fixing their rods, meeting them, getting to know them a little bit, I realized that, if I got my captain's license and I started fishing, I could probably do pretty well because by this time I'm pretty familiar with how to fish. I didn't know the spots. I didn't know all the secrets, but I knew enough that I could figure it out.
Yeah.
And really that's how it started. I got my license and somebody would get on the boat, we'd go fishing, and they would ask about the rods. And I would say, well, I have a shop in town, I build rods. Oh, you build custom rods? I would sell them a rod. Or they would come into the shop. Somehow they would find me and they would come in the shop and go, oh, you're guiding too? I want to go fishing with you.
Yeah.
So it parlayed into each other so well that it was kind of the secret to my success early on.
And at what point did you get your first big rod order that you kind of remember you couldn't even believe they, wanted the amount of rods or would pay the amount of money that you were asking?
It's funny you say that because there was a time that I didn't have a shop and I was working out of my house. I lived in Plantation Key Colony. And this one stands out in particular. Mike Collins was a local guide down here, very well known for many years. Unfortunately, he's recently passed. But Mike called me on the phone and he says, hey, I got a customer that wants some fly rods. Can we come by your house? Because I had my garage all set up for building rods. He said, can we come by and look at your stuff? He wants to get some rods. And his name was Watson Blair, and he was from England. And Watson comes over, and we're looking at things, and he says, I'd like to get some rods. I was like, great. He goes, why don't you build me about 10
fly rods?
Fly rods. And at this point, I'm going, holy cow. I've never built 10 fly rods for anybody. And, he wanted some bonefish rods, a couple of trout rods, tarpon rods. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. So I put the deal together, and it wasn't giant, but it was, for me at the time, it was big, and I was so excited, I couldn't stand it. It's like, here I am, just a guy building fishing rods that this guy could buy anything with his money, and he came to me. And it really kind of got my confidence going that maybe I'm onto something. And I never looked at it, even to this day, that I had it all figured out.
Yeah.
I mean, I was at a point where things were working, but they could always be better. I could always tweak them, and that's part of it. Yeah. You have to evolve as you're growing. And that was the first big rod order. And then along comes 1985, I had met Hal Chittum, and Hal was a guide here, and he had a customer base that he sold custom rods to. He was having them built, I believe, by Biscayne Rod in Miami. So we somehow got together. I don't know exactly how, but he was at the shop one day and he saw the stuff and he said, like to get some rods from you. So we started doing some business, and that's actually how I met Billy Knowles and Hank Brown. They ended up coming to the shop, and Billy and I became great friends. And unfortunately, Billy and Hank now are passed. But that's how it started. You know, the rod shop brought him in through Hal. So a year or two into this, Hal says, you know, I got some guys that want to open a store, and we want you to be front and center wrapping rods, and we can make everything you can think of. We'll have offshore, inshore, backcountry, fly fishing. We'll have it all. And of course, you know, he made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
Yep.
And I went to work for him. It was called H.T. Chittum and Company in Alamorada. Now it's Latitude 25. And Hal had the contacts with so many people. We had a rod order when I was working for him for 24 rods, but the guy needed them in less than a week.
Wow.
So Hal comes to me and he goes, can you build these 24 rods? He says, how fast can you build 24 rods? And I said, what's the budget? He goes, there's no budget. And I said, I'll do them in 36.
Wow.
36 hours.
Yep.
I'm going to start and finish these rods. Hal looks at me and he just shakes his head and he goes, what do you want me to tell them? Tell them they'll be ready by the end of the week. Huh. So I needed help, and a buddy of mine, Joe Finelli, was helping in the store. And I said, Joe, you and me, we're going 36 hours nonstop. We're going to build 24 rods. And they were big rods, offshore patrolling rods. And he looked at me and he says, I'm in. Let's go. Wow. And, you know, I had shown him how to glue things and put stuff together. So we started building everything. He was putting them together. I was wrapping them. And I want to say we probably went about 24 hours nonstop. No sleep, just grinded it out. And then we took a break and finished them. But we got these rods done in less than a week.
Well, and you had all the parts, which is obviously something that helped,
that's still to this day, that's the hardest part when you get an order, is having everything to fulfill it.
Yeah.
But it was called, the name of the boat was called Sunset Saloon. And I still have the pictures in my photo album. They were black and gold. And I'll never forget, Hal coming to me after going, I can't believe you did that. And I go, well, don't think it's going to happen all the time.
Yeah.
Don't make a habit of it.
Yeah.
And we had some great fun. Unfortunately, we kind of had a little falling out afterwards, and I went on my own again and opened a store called World Class Outfitters, which was across from Founders. And, I had that shop from 1986 to 1993, and I built a fly casting pond along the side of it, gave fly casting lessons, had Lefty Cray come down Memorial Day weekend. And it was then that all of the stuff I learned from Tommy Green came into play. Because now I'm that guy. I have employees, I have overhead, I have bills, I have inventory, I have things going on that has to work, and people that are counting on me. So it was fun too. We had a good time back then because fly fishing was evolving and people were getting into it. And I really started to, at that stage of the game, build a lot of fly rods, really got into the fly fishing because, again, I was fishing close to 300 days a year, 280 days a year. So I was on the water watching guys fish, seeing what was working, what wasn't working, what the rods needed to be. So I really had a testing ground of the Florida Keys for all of my ideas and rods that I wanted to build.
And a lot of the captains, like Billy and Hank, they would come and hang out when they got in from fishing, I'm assuming. And
yeah.
I know you guys have mentioned that in the past, so I'm sure there was plenty of stories that were shared. And did you have your own fishing rods in the store that, let's say Billy broke a rod, or somebody broke, one of the captains broke a rod like today, they come in, they need a rod for tomorrow's charter. Did you have something like that set up where you had your rods in the store and guys were coming in and, seeking help for the next day? And
same kind of idea, like what we're doing now with the inventory. But back then, I remember, I'm going to say it was probably early 90s, 91. I built 600 fly rods. And that was when Sage came out with their RPLX line that was super popular with everybody. Bonefish, tarpon, and it became the rod of choice. I was getting the blanks from Sage. I was building the rods myself. And now at this point in the game, I'm really understanding fly fishing, light tackle fishing. So with the inventory I had, guys would come in and I could sell them 2 or 3 fly rods and reels. And, I had the inventory to do it, and the flies. Tim Borski, that's a whole nother story. Tim got his start from working for me, and a good friend of mine, Frank O'Black, his wife was the manager at Pearl's Arts and Crafts. And she said, hey, this guy that works for us ties flies if you want some flies for your shop. Huh. And I said, oh, I'd love to see him. Yeah. So Borski put together some samples for me, and I went up to Miami and met him, and he showed me these flies, and he comes out with like a tray with little pieces of foam and these flies sticking out of it. It was like a work of art hors d'oeuvre tray of all these flies he was tying. And I look at them, and I didn't know everything about flies, but I knew these were really good. And they looked perfect. And I said to Tim, I go, these are beautiful. I go, how many can you tie for me? And he said, well, how many do you want? And I said, no, how many of these can you tie? Can you tie me thousands of these? And he looks at me and he goes, yeah, sure. I can tie you as many as you want. And I said, good, start tying. Yeah. And he started tying flies, and he tied. And as soon as he got, a batch done, whether it was 50, 100, whatever it was, I said, I'll take everything you can tie. And after a few months, I went up there and I said, you know what? Would you like to move to the Keys and, work in the shop, tie flies, and, be a part of what I'm doing? He walked over and pretty much told Pat, I'm moving to the Keys. Have a nice day. Right. Here's my 2 weeks to notice.
Right there, yeah.
And he moved to the Keys, and he moved down, and he started working for me in the shop. And, we just grew together with what he was doing, just complemented everything I was doing. And it was like the perfect marriage. And we were together for a long time. And then I realized that he could paint. I didn't know he could draw and paint and all that stuff. He was kind of keeping it to the side.
That's when he started selling the paintings in the store.
Yeah.
Because you are the one that told him to even put one up and put a price tag on it.
He had some at his little studio. He was actually, I gave him a place to stay. He was staying underneath my house in the colony. So he had free room and board. He got a salary. He had it made. He could go fishing anytime he wanted. So life was pretty good. And I went down there one day. We were talking about something, and he had a chalk, was using chalk, and he drew this permit and had a shadow box with the fly in it. And I said, that's beautiful. I said, what are you going to do with that? He goes, oh, I don't know. I just messing around with it. And I go, why don't you do a tarpon and a bonefish and a permit? We'll sell them in the store. He goes, you think? I go, yeah, these are beautiful. So he did all 3. We put them in the store. And the first guy that saw him was my good friend Ralph Shepard. We were fishing together. He walks in the store, he looks at him, and he says, who did those? And I said, Tim. He goes, I'll take all 3. Never talked about money, never anything, just I'll take them. And so now I got to figure out what these things are worth. Tim doesn't know. I don't know. I just know they're cool, and I know Ralph really wants them. Yeah. So I gave him a number, and he didn't bat an eye. I said, okay, bought them. And I told Tim, he was out fishing at the time because he loved to go bone fishing behind the store when the tide was right. sometimes when I get to the store, there was a note on the door, gone fishing. So he would close the store up if the tide was right.
Yep.
And he just didn't really understand that, hey, somebody's got to be here because we're in business.
Supplies or...
His attitude was, man, the tide was right. One of us should have been fishing.
Somebody had to be fishing.
So you got to love it. But I told him what had happened, and I think for Tim that was a big boost. I think he kind of realized that he had a talent, and he could do something that was going to be lucrative for him. And then, of course, we would put more in there, and he started doing, more paintings and trophies and things. So he really got to evolve working together in the shop, back in the day, and it was super cool. And Ralph actually to this day still has them in his house. Wow. I still see him. He loves them. They still look beautiful. And Tim didn't mess around. When he would frame it and put them together back in the day, he used all the best paper and glass and wood and everything, and they're pristine still to this day.
Well, it's like how you were building the rods and you had that talent and you didn't really realize you weren't, you didn't branch out and start your own store. You were just doing it because you liked it and you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Didn't realize there was a business behind it, and eventually somebody buys some rods and, they are looking for you because they want you to build them some rods, and that's when you put the pieces together.
Yeah.
That you have something.
It was then, kind of after Hal's, the Chittiman Company, I kind of realized this is what I'm going to be doing. Yeah. This is where I'm going. This is what I was blessed with. I had a talent and I had a skill, and I was so fortunate to be able to follow it and live it and do it. Because most people have things in life that they love doing, they never get a chance to do because they're hindered in another job or they're hindered in something that keeps them from doing it. And I mean, it wasn't easy. I mean, I struggled. I had my times like anybody, but I just stayed focused, and it was always plan A. I'm making plan A work. It's going to be tough. I'll get through it. In the guiding business, you had a spike in the winter till about 4th of July. And then it would slow way down. Our summers back then were very slow for business. Fishing was good. They had some tournaments in September and October, the bonefish tournaments, and then the red bone tournaments came along, and it started to get a little busier. But it wasn't till about 15 years ago that things started to get more known for good fishing in the summer. And now it's really year round. But back then you had to manage. You'd make so much money in the season that you had to put some money away for the off season, and God forbid we get a hurricane, then everything shut down. So I was really, really lucky to have the rod business, the store, the guiding, because it would just parlay with each other in everything that I was doing. And so the day came, 1993, one of my good customers came in the store one day and he says, I'd really like to have my own store someday. The guy's name was Bill Moore. Lived in Key Largo. He was a retired engineer, and his wife worked for MetLife. And I said, well, Bill, it only takes money. Write a check. And if you want this so bad, everything's for sale. And he wrote a check, and he bought the business like right then and there. So we put it together, and he took over, and I stayed on for a little bit, and his wife actually got transferred to Tampa shortly after this all happened. So I was coming home from fishing one day, and I see a U-Haul backed up to the store. And I'm thinking, what is going on? I stop, and I'm talking to Bill, and he goes, the wife got a job in Tampa. We got to move. He packed the store up and moved it to Tampa. Wow. So that was pretty interesting, but he seemed to had a pretty good idea, pretty focused on how to make it work over there and all that. But the interesting thing, when I sold the store, I called Tommy Green, and I thanked him for the education I got from him that I didn't realize at the time. But it was all the difference in the world after I had sold the store and realized what had happened and how all this worked. Yeah. And it was really from the way he ran his business, the way he built the rods, the way he would, make things work to be successful, you just couldn't kind of lay back and let things happen. You had to be stern. You had to be, just blunt with people a lot of times. But that was the business. You had to do it. You still had fun, but, you had to keep it straight. And I thanked him for that. And we keep in touch to this day. And I was very fortunate to have that growing up. I never in a million years would have thought I would be building fishing rods or I would be a fishing guide in the Keys. I did not set out for any of that. I was going to play baseball. I was going to have a big boat, and I was going to have someone else building my rods. But it didn't work out, and it was okay. I didn't like it at the time, and I didn't understand why. But, that's life. I mean, I think things happen for a reason, and it certainly put me in a place that I was able to have a great career and a great life and a great family with 3 daughters and 2 grandkids right now. So it's really been kind of a blessing for me to be here and do my thing, because this is what I enjoy doing. And, now with this store, the stuff we're doing is just a way for me to kind of parlay 50 years of building fishing rods, 40 years of guiding, to where somebody walks in the door, I'm pretty confident I can answer their question.
I get it. Well, and with that said, I guess this podcast is sponsored by Islamorada Fishing Outfitters, your one-stop shop for high-end fishing rods built by Randy Towe, right here in the Florida Keys. Stop by Islamorada Fishing Outfitters in Tavernier, just north of the electric company, and check out the shop. From rods to reels and everything in between, we have a wide selection of all of your fishing essentials. You can also head over to Islamoradafishingoutfitters.com to purchase online. Anything else?
I just want to say, the stuff we're doing at the store and custom rods. Most custom rod builders, you order your rod. You come in, you say, I want it this way, that way, and what we've been able to do here is scale the rods, in that we have inventory of rods that are black, because most people come in and they say, I don't want all the fancy stuff. I don't want it painted. I just want a rod that's built right. And as I've shared with you how to build them, how to find the spline, how to put the guides on right, how to put the grips on, we turn everything on a metal lathe that we do. Every single rod goes that way. So our building process is much different than a lot of people.
It's the old school way.
Old school way. And in the future, we'll be sharing tips and secrets and all of that stuff in our podcast and what we're doing. But we've been able to scale it to where we have a line of backcountry rods, we have a line of offshore rods, we have a line of fly rods, even having our own blanks made. So when a guy buys a boat and he needs 10 fishing rods, he can come in and get 10 custom rods. They'll be black, but they'll all match. And if he wants something nicer, if he wants it painted to match his boat or something like that, we can make it. So we still do the custom stuff like that, but having the inventory, I'm really excited about that. And it's taken a long time.
50 years.
just to organize, to be efficient, and to make it work. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited about this podcast. We're going to have some great fun with it and tell some great stories, and I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, see you on the next one.